Oh, hi there, dear viewer. Intel here. You're early. I wasn't expecting to see you here. I just got up and haven't even had time to make my coffee. Well, since you're here, good morning, afternoon, or evening. What in the world is that? Who's there? Show yourself. I have horns and they're very sharp. Vinch? What in the world are you doing in my house? And why are you stealing my milk and Pop-Tarts?
Sorry, man. I don't have any food at my house. I hope you don't mind. You can put the horns away. I also needed a place to stay, so,
You could have called me, man.
Sorry. I forgot.
Look, I'll let you have that Pop-Tart, and I'll allow you to crash on my couch for the night, under one condition. You need to help me with this review that I was about to do before you barged in.
Why would I need help you with the review? Seems like you got this down pretty well by yourself.
Well, because I'm gonna talk about
I'll do it. God, I love...
But you didn't even let me finish.
God, I love Bendy and the Ink Machine!
Well, I guess I don't need to persuade him, guys. Let's review Bendy and the Ink Machine with Vinch, after he eats my last cherry Pop-Tart.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
Bendy and the Ink Machine was a fascinating phenomenon when it first released. The first of what would turn out to be 5 chapters of this game strolled onto the internet at the beginning of 2017, and the intriguing art style immediately grabbed people. The first chapter featured interesting puzzles that included finding different objects to activate the Ink Machine and exploring a long-abandoned cartoon studio, along with a cryptic, mysterious cliffhanger of an ending that left people very curious about what would come next. As more chapters were released, the interest and excitement surrounding this mysterious game grew and grew as people wanted to know more about Bendy the Ink Demon and what on earth was up with this ink machine. Why all the bacon soup? How deep underground does this supposed cartoon studio go? What was with the mysterious drawing and notes and tape recordings? Unfortunately, at least in this game, a lot of that ended up being very anticlimactic due to the 5th and final chapter being a cliche and underwhelming ending, but we'll get to that later on.
I will admit, in terms of mascot horror, Bendy just so happens to be one of my favorites. The visuals and the story built in later entries are some of my favorites in this type of genre. Is it my favorite horror game of all time? No. That's a title shared by the big 3 to me, those being Outlast, Amnesia, and Silent Hill. But unfortunately, when you love someone, you gotta tell them like it is.
Let's explore what made this game popular in the first place. What makes Bendy stand out is the art style. It very heavily leans into the ink aesthetic, and it pops in a way hardly any other games do. Everything has this tan, brownish color mixed with inky black, which echoes a living 1930s cartoon, similar to how those old Disney cartoons looked back in the day, which I think was the intention. It's really neat. On top of that, people were very intrigued with the chapter-based release gimmick that nowadays has gotten very repetitive and old, with a lot of games copying it now, such as Dark Deception, Poppy Playtime, Garden of Banban, and other games ripping off Poppy Playtime and doing their own chapter-based releases. Bendy did it first, though, and it was extremely novel at the time. No one had seen a game come out this way, and it successfully had people hooked and excited to see more as each chapter was released. Nowadays, waiting for the next chapter of something is just a slog and more annoying than anything else. I'm looking at you, Dark Deception, but that's a topic for another video. Looking back on the game some 8 years later, the only reason I was excited for each new chapter release was because I truthfully did want to see what was going to happen next, because the game pulls you into this idea that each chapter is building up to some ultimate conclusion that makes the 1.5 year wait for the full game worth it. Does Bendy and the Ink Machine do that? No. No, it does not. Okay, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go over the gameplay and what playing through this story offers you. And I'll be honest, it's very hit or miss. As the title of this video suggests, the vast majority of the gameplay is boiled down to just walking. You casually walk through all sorts of different rooms and hallways, sometimes running away from things every now and then while interacting with objects that occasionally need to be messed with to open paths, or things you can just look at for giggles, or if you want some hidden lore, if you want to call it that. This lore usually consists of tape recordings left behind by former employees at the studio documenting their experiences working there. However, there's a reason why a lot of people consider this to be a walking simulator. As I said, 90% of this game, or even more than that, is just walking. Even when you run, you don't move all that much faster, and there's a ton of times where you have to make your way through pools of ink that slow you down, or you'll run into some planks you have to break down with an axe that you pick up at the end of the first chapter. You'll very occasionally encounter enemies, but the combat here is nothing more than just clicking your mouse or pressing a button on your controller to slash your axe in a very slow and sluggish way. After a few hits, the enemy dies. It's very bland.
It should be no surprise to anyone who has played this game, or at the very least seen glimpses of it, that combat was never one of Bendy's fortes. Enemies can be taken down in just 2 hits or so, which makes me wonder if any weapons were even necessary. Another complaint is how slow and clunky you move. It makes it a slog to get from point A to point B at times. The movement was tuned up a bit in Bendy and the Dark Revival, Ink Machine's successor, to which I mean I can actually f***ing run. And to what Intel just mentioned, Bendy and the Ink Machine is, without a doubt, a walking simulator. Another issue is the puzzle solving. It ranges from pressing this button, collecting this thing, and bringing this thing here. Because according to the developers, walking around while hitting around 2 crucial buttons equals fun gameplay.
I can already hear the argument against this, though. There's barely any fights in the game, let alone enemy encounters, so why should the combat be super extensive? And I ask of you, dear viewer, as a counter-argument to that argument, why not add more combat and make it even more engaging? That would add a lot of depth to the experience and would make it more than just cool. I walked my way to the finish line while swinging my axe a couple times while looking around and touching things while listening to people talk through random audio recordings. Are you not entertained? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that something being a walking simulator is always a bad thing. Silent Hill PT, one of the creepiest and dread-inducing demos of all time, is nothing more than a walking simulator. You walk through the same hallway that loops over and over again, but every time you start under the loop, things begin to change and get more and more unsettling. It all builds up to a terrifying jump scare that's amplified by the building tension and dread after repeatedly walking through the same hallway again and again. That is a walking simulator done right. Bendy, on the other hand, has a lot of empty space in between puzzles or enemy encounters. Again, there is just so much walking with nothing happening. Well, scratch that. There are occasional jump scares and stuff that happen every now and then to keep you from falling asleep. The game only starts picking up in terms of events that require you to do more than just walk around in Chapter 3, which involves a stealth sequence where you can avoid the scary projector man as he skulks around. And I'll admit, this part is pretty tense. Chapter 3 also has a segment where you're avoiding Bendy himself, and it's very stressful. You're having to climb up and down these floors, trying to make your way out of this nightmare you're thrown into by the evil Alice the Angel, all while hiding from Bendy as he stalks you. It's good stuff, but it makes you wish the entire game was like this. It's why Chapter 3 is regarded as the best chapter out of them all, simply because you're actually doing something instead of walking around like a moron. And what's more egregious is that Chapter 4 is right back to more walking, although it does end with a boss fight at the end, which is admittedly pretty cool. Chapter 5, again, is mostly just walking around with a section towards the middle where you fight a bunch of enemies, and then what I think is supposed to be a final boss fight with Bendy, but it's just basically pulling levers to defeat him. It's very underwhelming. Another thing that really stood out to me when playing this game is the blatant lack of urgency and overall personality of the main character, Henry. This guy is the most bland, nonchalant protagonist that I have ever seen. He is the definition of, I'm just gonna roll with this. Whenever something major happens, whether it's scary or if he falls down a big pit or has to fight a boss, he is either completely silent or delivers dialogue that makes it appear he's absolutely unfazed, and that dialogue is extremely phoned in every time. He's got even less of a personality than Ethan from Resident Evil 7, if that's even possible.
Boris?
Dude, you just met a living cartoon character in the flesh, and all you say is, Boris? And that's just one example. There are many, many other instances where Henry just exists. That's it. He's the main character. That's all there is to him. You would think that any normal guy in a situation like this would be freaking the hell out. This man is walking through a living cartoon with lakes of ink everywhere, being attacked by ink monsters and corrupted cartoon characters, all the while he's just this meme.
Oh no! Anyway,
Enough about that. From here, let's discuss the story. You want to take this one, Vinch?
I thought you would never ask. The game begins with Chapter 1, of course, with Henry, our main protagonist. He gets a letter telling him to come back home to play. When we enter the building, we see his studio in absolute ruin. We are then prompted to look for what Joey has in store for us, meaning we have to look for the ink machine. After we enter the room containing the ink machine, we put in a few dry cells to chunk the lever, and then we see the ink machine rise from the darkness. We then just leave the room to try and figure out how to turn on the ink machine. While walking, we encounter a and to the right, we enter a main control room, where we need to collect a few things to get this thing started. To our right, we see Boris the Wolf, who seems to be having a really bad day. We find a bunch of stuff, place them on some pillars, and we go to make the ink flow. On the way back, we get a Bendy cutout jump scare. We restart the flow of ink and turn on the machine. We make our way back, getting spooked by the ink demon, the main antagonist, and we make like a drum and beat it. We fall through the floor and we make our way downstairs to grab an axe and take a swing. After clearing some debris, we enter a room with a pentagon. Upon walking up to it, we get epilepsy. Ending the first chapter.
Cool, I love epilepsy. It's the best. Tell me it doesn't get worse from here.
The second chapter begins with us recovering from epilepsy.
Damn it!
We get our axe and keep pushing. We get through a hallway of ink and we see a figure known as Sammy Lawrence, carrying a Bendy cutout. We flip a few switches and enter a very dark room. We have to find a switch, but we also notice a stairwell that we have to drain. After we flip the switch, we encounter our first enemy, the Searchers. After we sluggishly kill them, a door opens up, and we walk towards Sammy's office because that's where the pump is to drain the stairwell. But to do that, we need to drain outside the door. We need to find the keys in the trash can so we can open Wally's closet, where we get a randomly generated puzzle in order to get one of the pumps. We have to run to get all the correct things after we turn on a projector. After we do that, we go in and get a valve, and once we do that, we leave and get... it's so scary. Oh, I'm shivering. We see Sammy on the top balcony and... We beat the enemies and go into the sewers to look for a second valve handle. We see a very big searcher with a nice hat holding our valve. We follow it, and we gotta squish it since this doesn't want to stay still. We get our valve, drain Sammy's office, to chunk another lever, and make our way to the exit. But instead of freedom, we get a concussion.
Forget walking simulator, this game is already a frustration simulator.
We are now tied up and going to be sacrificed to the ink demon. Don't ask me or Intel how that works, we don't have WikiHow on standby. The ritual backfires and the ink demon kills Sammy. We escape, chop a few enemies, and our axe breaks. Great! We now encounter the ink demon ourselves, and we have to make like a banana and split.
You're hilarious, bro.
We escape into a toy room, and we encounter an alive and well Boris the Wolf.
What?
What?
Man, you gotta prepare me for plot twists like that. That threw me for a whole loop.
Anyways, next up is Chapter 3. This chapter begins with us leaving Boris' crib. He now tags along with us to find an exit, and along the way, we learn how to hide and go through a dark hallway. We hear footsteps and we just continue. We encounter a dead end, but decide to give Boris our flashlight, and he goes through the vent. We enter a place called Heavenly Toys, and I just want to take a break from the story breakdown real quick, just to say that this place is oddly beautiful. Some form of wonder went into this part of the environment, and I can't help but have a smile on my face when I see this room. Any thoughts on this, Intel?
I wholeheartedly agree. This is one of the best looking areas in the entire game. I could definitely sleep here. Pitch me a tent and pop open a can of bacon soup. I'm good.
Moving on, we unjam some jammed gears that got our way of escape into a jam.
If you shoehorn one more bad pun into this video, I'm going to lose it.
We enter a room, and this room is where we're introduced to Alice Angel, a character who was introduced via a poster in Chapter 2. We listened to a catchy tune, and I was really hoping the studio would play Freebird for a moment. But
that would be IP infringement, right?
then a light shows up right in front, revealing a door.
I see you there. A new fly in my endless web. Come along now. Let's see if you're worthy to walk with angels.
Wow, she sure sounds like an interesting character. I sure hope we don't get completely overloaded by fetch quests from her.
Oh, you poor naive soul. Moving past the foreshadowing that was just mentioned, we are split between two paths, Demon and Angel. Down the Demon route is a room flooded by ink, alongside an audio log made by Joey Drew himself, the guy who owns the studio and who sent Henry a letter to return to the studio in the first place. Whereas down the Angel route, we have a neat and tidy room, one where you'd likely catch me sleeping in. You can also find an audio recording in there of Susie Campbell, and she sounds very unhappy, to say the least. She mentions being recast by Allison Pendle as the voice of Alice Angel. We carry on to find out, and Boris scaring us. We're given another weapon known as the Gent Pipe, and we press on. We then needed to chunk two levers at once. Boris gets one lever, and we get the other one. Down the hallway, we see a poster for the Butcher Gang. Man, it'd be interesting to see Bendy cartoons in the real world. I wonder if some of them are 3D. Damn it.
You spoke too soon.
After giving the freak a very bad headache, we chunk the lever, and we go through the door that opened. We head into an elevator and learn that we got ourselves a hot date. We head to the door that Boris goes to, and when it's barely finished opening, he makes a beeline towards it. Another Boris? As a matter of fact, there's a bunch of dead Borises. Boris-I? I don't know. We walk across the boards and enter a room where Alice is torturing a Butcher Gang member while giving a long speech about the effects the ink has, saying that the ink demon touched Alice's face and made her into Two-Face from Batman. Now all she's missing is her coin to flip. She says she'll spare us if we do a few favors of hers. We go back outside and get ready for the most boring hour of our lives. We're given numerous fetch quests, and they just feel like they don't end. We have to get gears, ink, power cells, blah blah blah. These segments are honestly the worst part of the chapter. And the best at the same time, seeing as we get to encounter the ink demon. Speaking of which, during random segments, the ink demon will spawn nearby on the map every once in a while and will follow some kind of path to another exit point in a wall. This is honestly pretty cool, and offers actual danger during these parts. But the problem is that these moments don't happen very often, which makes it a shame since this is one of the only chapters that make him a present threat in real time. He can be avoided by hiding or leaving the current floor through the elevator. Great segment, but not enough of it.
It's crazy that what's considered the best chapter in the game barely has any Bendy in it. They should have just called the game Alice Angel and a bunch of other random characters and the Ink Machine. The main spotlight of this game is a background character.
From here, the fetch quests go on, and on, and on. And after a certain number, we are thrown into a fight with members of the Butcher Gang. Piper, the one we encountered from the poster, the Striker, the one who can eat cereal through the top of his head, and the Fisher, the one who could play tetherball with its head. After we win this fight, we are instructed to go back to Alice's door and— oh, come on! We are immediately thrown into another fetch quest. We go down to the bottom floor, pick up an ink cart, and—
Incel? Was that your cat?
No.
The scream indicates our new friend, known as the Projectionist. This adds a very small threat to the chapter, but it was rather needed. An audio log hints at the fact that he was a man named Norman Polk, a man whose other audio log we could find in Chapter 2. This is the usual fetch quest you'd expect, but now you have him lurking around. Each heart you find will attract the Projectionist to your position, meaning you will have to hide until he goes away. After getting the ink cards, you make your way down to the elevator to leave. And moments after, you fall back down. Man, this game doesn't like us being free from the studio, does it? The reason for all of these dead Borises, I don't know, is because Alice is harvesting their insides to make herself beautiful.
Interesting tactic.
She then takes Boris, we gotta go save him now, and we go to the next chapter.
Oh, cool. The next chapter is going to be us trying to save Boris, right? That means it's going to be an action-packed, thrilling adventure that won't consist of us just walking everywhere again, right?
Would you be mad if I told you no?
This chapter begins with us needing to find another, you guessed it, valve to open a door. This valve is located in a room that's in a very desperate need of a good scrubbing, and
is that someone who's really enjoying a pizza?
Yeah, let's just go with that.
we grab the valve and make our way into a room with humanoid figures, praising a Bendy statue. We find an audio log belonging to Susie Campbell, implying that Joey has a preposition for her. We flick in a book, which can open the door ahead. After flicking in a few more books, we get epilepsy.
Should we have added an epilepsy warning at the beginning of this video?
Oop.
When we make it through the door, our goal is to then make it across a pit. We have to find a gear, and to do that, we have to make one. An ink dispenser thingamajig takes in ink and uses it to make things. This implies that the world of Bendy is actually a world made of ink, which could explain why everything is the way it is. After we do the things, we get spooked by a scripted near-death scare. We make our way across the pit and enter a hallway that has more epilepsy.
Yep, we definitely should have added an epilepsy warning.
We rush up the stairs and find people. These are called the Lost Ones, not to be confused with that Five Nights at Treasure Island series. These are people who have been born in this world of paper and ink. We sluggishly make our way through the vents and we get jump scared by Bendy, who just rubs his finger on the vent cover and just f***s off. Guess we aren't getting cool things in this chapter.
Someone explained to me how they made this dude somewhat of an actual threat in the last chapter, and now he's back to being a jump scare manufacturer in this chapter. It's like the developers had no idea what to actually do with him.
We make our way through the vents and learn that this was a theme park that was formerly in the works. In order to find Boris, we gotta get through the haunted house by, chunking levers. The first one is done by winning games. Simple enough. The second one is in a room with the butcher gang, and since we don't have a weapon, we gotta distract them by throwing cans of bacon soup. We chunk 2 levers in this room, one for the haunted house and one to leave the room.
What would this game do without levers?
It would probably spontaneously combust.
We then have to chunk a 3rd lever, and in order to do that, we enter a room with a screwy carnival ride that has a head inside. Oh my god! This is Bertram Piedmont, the one who designed the theme park. And boy, is he in over his head. You get it?
Vinch, I swear to God, I'm about to end this video right now.
Anyways, we kill him by hitting all the weak points in his arm. After we decommission him, we chunked our 3rd lever. We go to our final area and we see inferiority. The projectionist returns with a vengeance. So we gotta chunk a lever, which triggers a chase. We run upstairs to chunk the power lever, which makes everything go black for a few seconds. We leave and this son of a won't give up. We hide and right as the projectionist is about to make a bacon soup out of us, we get
Epilepsy and a street fight? Hot dog!
Is this secret leaked footage of Mortal Kombat 13?
Stop.
We leave right after Bendy drags away the projectionist's corpse, and we chunked one last lever and move on into the haunted house. After a long way through the spooky house, we have a mutilated Frankenstein-esque Boris, whom we have to kill. Honestly, not a half-bad boss fight, but it takes a whole 3-hit formula to kill him. After he's put down like a rabid dog, Alice charges at us and leaves us with the best part in the game, getting rid of her.
Finally!
We then meet 2 new characters, Allison and Tom, and the chapter ends.
Wow, pretty cool ending to the chapter. I'm sure this finale is going to be amazing and serve as a fitting conclusion to the story. Right, Vinch? Vinch?
It's comparable to what I left in your restroom. Okay, now where were we?
Chapter 5.
The last chapter begins with captivity. You are held captive by Alice Angel and a Boris clone named Tom. During another conversation, you get a seeing tool for hidden messages. That's pretty much it. The ink demon is right outside the door and Alice and Tom leave Henry to die. We use the seeing tool to find our way out and end up snatching a pipe, and we make our escape. You run down a hallway, laddie da, Then we come across a boat that we take to float down the Ink River. Slowly. Clumps of ink get stuck inside the paddle wheel, and we get Discount Master Hand. And it chases us through the most tense segment in this chapter. This is the only tense segment in this chapter. We end up on this washed up bay, and we encounter a Sammy boss fight. The music doesn't really make me think that the fight is tense, but it's rather comical, and makes me personally think of a hillbilly fight. Imagine, if you will, being in a Resident Evil boss fight and dueling banjos is playing. We knock Sammy's mask off to see a palette-swapped Slenderman. Ha! And then Tom gives him a splitting headache. We end up fighting a swarm of searchers and lost ones for a little bit, then move on. We take a tumble into a lounge, and we need to place pipes to drain a room. In order to do that, we gotta... Oh, come on. You need to trudge the halls to get ink to make pipes while avoiding the Butcher Gang, and it goes on and on and on and on. About 9 months in the birth of a child later, we get all the pipes in place and drain the room. We look in a box for type of reel. However, it's missing the said reel. Because of course it is. Alice and Tom follow us down here and are made to believe we have another fetch quest that we're gonna have to embark on. But Tom punches open a sealed door and just passes on that idea. Honestly, the funniest part of the game. We trudge through more halls and see this weird ink machine castle. We're told that Alice and Tom can't follow you in there to set them free. It's heartbreaking that they can't come with us. It's not really that heartbreaking. I'll get to that. We enter a throne room, and after a dialogue from Joey, we pick up a reel called The End, and moments after, we get a visit from Bendy himself. Bendy transforms into Dollar Store Venom, and we gotta make sure we destroy the ink machine from within. AKA breaking like 4 tubes. Yep. That's the fight. We make our way into the throne room again and load the reel into a player. And right before Venom gets us, the reel plays to reveal just an end card. The Ink Demon's #1 weakness is none other than epilepsy.
Of course. And I'm about to chuck my controller out the window. That was it? That was the final boss?
Yes, Intel. That was the final boss.
I feel very validated in saying this is one of the worst final bosses I have ever seen in a game.
We make one last walk through an apartment, which is none other than Joey Drew's apartment, if it wasn't evident by the drawing desk and letters directed towards him on a corkboard. We have a chat with a very old Joey, and we get sent back to the beginning of the game. An endless loop. I guess that means we're doing the whole video again then.
Do not give Seth ideas. Bendy and the Ink Machine was a fascinating phenomenon when it first released. Turned out to be 5
No, we're not doing that.
So, that's it? The ending of this game is just us being sent back to the beginning?
Precisely.
That is so lame! We waited for 1.5 years for all these chapters to come out just to get an ending like this? What on earth happened?
Thank goodness Bendy and the Dark Revival exists, is all I can say.
So, that's the story broken down. This game is such a mixed bag for me. There are times where brilliance shines through, particularly with the visuals. I still stand by my opinion that this is one of the most unique looking games we have on the market. The living cartoon aesthetic is so cool to look at, and it makes this game stand out visually in ways I've never seen from anything else. It's fantastic. However, the plot and story leave a lot to be desired. Not only is the gameplay largely just walking around and interacting with things, aka a walking simulator, but the story is also very hit or miss. The idea of a former cartoonist coming back to his old studio and getting trapped there with living beings resembling the old cartoons he took part in creating is fantastic. However, the execution isn't as good. The seemingly endless walking and slowly smacking enemies with a pipe bogs down the experience a lot, and I just found myself bored a lot of the time. Most of the game is like that. Walk to a certain location, solve a mundane puzzle, listen to an audio recording, get jump scared by an enemy or a cardboard cutout falling, etc., etc.
I do agree with Intel on this. Bendy and the Ink Machine feels like it's better off as some type of experience. The gameplay is more than lacking, and the story needs to be more fleshed out upon than just slapping Alice Angel in and making her the primary focus for 2 chapters, and introducing new characters at the very end with very little screen time. The puzzles are far too simplistic, and I hope in future games they will improve upon greatly. Bendy and the Dark Revival did, in fact, prove that a sequel that can improve on the first game in any franchise. The horror, I would like to believe, comes in the idea of being trapped with no escape, and being shown that what has become of all the hard work you have done turned into a twisted nightmare makes this definitely one of the most appealing mascot horror games. Right up there with FNAF, actually. Some audio recordings felt important to the story, and others didn't really feel important at all. Additionally, the gameplay is lacking. The movement feels sluggish, and the combat is honestly the weakest part of the game for me. I'd have preferred Resident Evil's combat over Bendy's. That's enough glazing Resident Evil from me.
Chapter 3 is the best chapter in the game because there are actually things happening, and you have to avoid enemies like Bendy and the Projectionist in real time. Despite the fetch quests, it's a good time, and it's actually tense. It raises the question, why wasn't every chapter like this? Chapter 1 is just walking around finding things for the ink machine. Chapter 2 is mainly just walking around with a couple of chase segments. Chapter 4 is more walking around sent into overdrive. And Chapter 5 is more walking around, more mundane puzzles, and a couple of very lame boss fights, specifically the final boss. Sure, you can explore the areas and listen to audio recordings and all that jazz, but it's just not exciting. It's certainly not scary, and I didn't find myself jumping out of my chair when scary things happened. Again, Bendy and the Dark Revival does fix a lot of the issues present here, but we're judging Bendy and the Ink Machine on its own right now. To wrap all of this up, Bendy and the Ink Machine is a product of its time, but not entirely for the right reasons. It's slow and boring a lot of the time, has very weak combat, and caps everything off with a terrible ending. The visuals definitely give it some points, but not a lot. I feel like a fair score for this would be a 5 out of 10? 6 out of 10? I don't know, 5.5 out of 10, let's go with that. Also, Vinch gives it a 6 out of 10 as well, so we're pretty much in agreement. Also, here's how I would rank the chapters from worst to best. Chapter 4. This is definitely the worst chapter, with the most walking and not a whole lot going on. It's redeemed a bit by a decent boss fight at the end, but as Vinch said before, it's just the tired old formula of hit the boss 3 times to defeat them. A very disappointing follow-up to a great Chapter 3. Chapter 5. Not quite as bad as Chapter 4, since the player is given a lot more to do with more action and such, but it's still a pretty dull finale, let down even more by a very disappointing final boss fight and the extremely cliche endless loop ending. Considering we waited over a year and a half for this game to be fully realized, this was not a good ending. Chapter 1. The first chapter is for sure right in the middle of the pack. It's a decent starter chapter to get the player acquainted with the environment and sets up the ink machine because it's in the name of the game. We need some kind of setup, although it doesn't really go anywhere. It ends with a nice chase sequence at the end too. Fairly decent start to the game. Chapter 2. This one is a step up from Chapter 1 since there's more to do, but it's still a lot of walking. I'm sensing a pattern here. It's got a fairly good ending with a confrontation with Sammy Lawrence and a tense chase sequence again with Bendy. It also has a great cliffhanger with the player meeting Boris. Chapter 3. This is by far the best chapter in the game. There's far more to do with actual good tense sequences where you hide from Bendy along with avoiding the Projectionist. It's a great part of the game that stands out from the rest of the chapters for sure. Who wouldn't want a hot date with Alice the Angel? And that should do it for this review of Bendy and the Ink Machine. In all seriousness, huge shout out to Vinch for joining me on this review. A video like this is groundbreaking for the channel, and I'm honored to have this man help kick off the collaborative content here. He'll be joining me again sometime down the road when we inevitably review this game's sequel, Bendy and the Dark Revival, a much better game may I add. Vinch is also a reviewer himself, and he's currently working on a Zelda Ocarina of Time review as we speak, so if you want to see his opinions on other games, go check out his channel. I mean it. This man is absolutely hilarious, and his content will be well worth your time. Thanks again for joining me, Vinch.
So, can I eat that last Pop-Tart now? I can also crash here for the night then? I promise it'll be just one night. I'm trying to stop myself from being evicted, and I need a night to figure that out while not being at home.
Yes. And yes, I'll just go buy more Pop-Tarts at the store. But listen here, don't be snoring really loudly in the middle of the night. I need my beauty sleep.
No promises, Skeleton Man.
Never mind that. Thank you all so much for watching this review. If you enjoyed it, be sure to drop me a like and comment down below on what you like and don't like about Bendy and the Ink Machine. And don't forget to subscribe today to become a fellow intellectual. What did you agree with in this review, and what did you disagree with? Remember, any and all opinions are allowed and are valid. And also, don't forget to check out Vinch's channel in the description. Have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. Peace!
We get through a hallway of ink. Phone! Shut up! I'll do it. God, I love men.